Welcome to a brand new episode of Back Pass with Ras, and today we're doing a club feature. It's a club that has been spoken about by some of our guests in the previous episodes. It was first touched upon by the late Shabby Singh. He spoke at great length about this club, and then we had other guests along the way like Nazri Nasseh, Lee Man Hon, who've mentioned this club. And this club today, on the day of our recording, they're on a high. It's none other than Tottenham Hotspur. And to speak about them, I've got two guests here. One is Daryl Spykerman, and the other is James Walton. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. And I'm sure you are on top of the world today.
It's a good morning, right, Daryl? It's a good morning after years and years of beatings at Old Trafford. It's nice when we win sometimes.
Yeah, good morning, good day, good start to the week.
Yeah, exactly. I understand that. And congratulations, first of all, on that victory late last night, early this morning. So, yeah. So let's start with this. Spurs is quite unlike other clubs. You've never heard a club that has a phrase attached to it. When people say, "Oh, that's so Spursy," that's just the Spursy way to do it. When you hear that, I want to ask the both of you, what does it, feel to you? What does it matter? When you hear that being said about Spurs, what effect does it have on you?
I mean,
Either one of you can go first.
yeah, I'll take this one first. What does it mean to feel Spursy? What it means is last night we were 2-0 up in the 65th minute playing against 10 men and absolutely in complete and utter control of the game.
Yeah.
And then Timo Werner misses a one-on-one, and suddenly Man United have two penalty shouts in the space of 30 seconds. And if you're a real Spurs fan, you're thinking, we're going to mess this up. That's Spursy right there.
Yeah, I
So
think
is this? Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
James is,
Continue,
I think
Daryl.
James is right. It's about, I think I heard it before, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory or something like that. And I think for me, I've been watching Spurs and supporting them for 30 years, and for many of those years, it was difficult watching Spurs play. I think when the Premier League came about, and then Spurs were kind of slow to adapt to the Premier League. You saw how Man United really got ahead under Sir Alex. Even Liverpool was struggling, but Arsenal were also doing very well under Wenger also. But Spurs just couldn't adapt. It's kind of like we had the good strikers, midfield, but like somehow in defense or the goalie wasn't good enough and all that sort of things. So Spurs always would find themselves in awkward scenarios during games, like they'll be leading 2-0, but somehow we will end up losing 3-2, something like that. The classic one is always like 2001. We were 3-0 up against Man United at White Hart Lane, and United came back and won 5-3, something like that. Yeah, I think I have a catalogue of a few comebacks that teams have done against us.
I'll give you one worse, Daryl. The FA Cup game when we were 3-0 up at home against Man City. Man City had Joey Barton sent off. To lose that game 4-3.
Yeah, and this was like Man City before the money came in. It was like a regular Man City team, a lot of youngsters, a few veterans in there, and they still like surprise Spurs. But mix in that also was like Spurs will go to Arsenal and then somehow get a 4-4 draw. We were like 4-2 down at some point. We'll go to Man United during lockdown and win 6-1. It's kind of the whole spectrum of emotions or football results that you get with Spurs that you need a strong heart to see it through. And there's not a lot of trophies in the past like 30 years, like for me. And it's just being on the journey lah. Yeah.
All right. So just to sum it up, is when someone says it's being Spursy, would you take it as an insult or is it just humor? You brush it off with humor.
Yeah, mainly you just laugh it off because for me, I know it's a wide range of emotions. It's across the spectrum, and there's some like joyous moments, and then we like the comeback against Ajax in the Champions League semi-final, like in 2019. That was also like a crazy game, the way it unfolded, and to us, maybe Spursy can mean the really bad, but also the really good stuff that happens to us lah.
All right. Okay. So let's start with this. I mean, the both of you are, I just got to mention this as well, are members of the Singapore Spurs Supporters Club. There's many S's in that
There's a lot. Yeah.
acronym, Singapore Spurs
Three,
Supporters Club.
three, three S's, bro.
Three S's, yeah, the triple SC. I don't know, Daryl, you held a position of power in at some point of time in the club. What was your role previously?
I think I was in the committee previously. I think about 2008 to about 2012 or 2013. At that time I was helping with merchandise, and after that also helping with the membership. Yeah. I think Singapore Spurs Supporters Club have
Even you getting mixed up, bro.
continued to grow in terms of members, and also trying to reach out to the members like in new ways as you know, technology advances. I think one of the big things that they did was the live screening in the early days. Fast forward to today, who really needs a live screening when you can get it anywhere on your phone, on your laptop? They even did group order sales where they would consolidate orders from like Spurs shop. This was like early 2000s. Once again, who needs that today in the age of Shopee, Amazon, and all this, and buying directly from the club also. So they have to find new ways, sometimes doing bigger screenings, having events before kickoff and all that. So good to see Singapore Spurs Supporters Club still growing, still trying to reach out to the fans, or like even the younger fans also.
Okay. James, what's your role in the club?
I think I bankrolled the club. I don't know. I'm not sure. No.
James
you
is
mentioned this on WhatsApp. I'm not sure if I can mention it, so just right off the horse's mouth then.
I think I'm the resident trivia buff and the source of knowledge, and occasionally a little bit in the ITK, just because of some of my connections over the years. So generally, I'm the one everybody, especially during the transfer window, I'm the one everyone's writing, "Hey, James, what's happening?" That's usually first thing in the morning. Are we signing anyone? So that's my job, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so you're the Fabrizio Romano of the club.
Something like that, yeah.
All right. Okay, so James, let's stay with you. Spurs, how do you become a Spurs fan? Was it your, neighborhood club? Was it through family?
Bad karma. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. No, my actually family-wise, my dad's a Wolves fan going back to the 1950s and the Billy Wright team, league contenders in the 50s. My brother was a Liverpool fan who'd never been to a Liverpool game until I took him to a Spurs Liverpool game a few years ago. I started supporting Spurs. I mean, I grew up in London, but not in North London. Grew up actually closer to Charlton kind of area. But the first football match I ever watched on TV was the 1984 UEFA Cup final against Anderlecht, and to see that and to see that performance. And so I started to take an interest, and then I really became a true fan in that kind of 84-85 season, which was, the team that had Ossie Ardiles and Glenn Hoddle in the midfield. You still had your John Chidozis and Tony Galvins and Gary Mabbott.
Was Ricky Villa still there?
No, Ricky Villa had just left by then, but Ossie was still there, and they were just such a great team to watch, that mid-'80s team. So that was Peter Shreves in 1985, when they really came so close to winning the title, but just had such a fixture congestion towards the end of the season that they kind of fell away, and Everton ended up winning the title. And, I was watching the team and thinking, this is a team that plays football the way I like to play football, the way I like to watch football. So yeah, all the way since really 84, 85, long time.
All right, and fast forward to one of my first memories watching English football live on TV, which was the 1991 FA Cup semi-final, first against Arsenal and then the final against Nottingham Forest. So on the back of that, I did develop a soft spot for Spurs, but of course I didn't become a Spurs fan. But, of course, Paul Gascoigne and Gary Lineker in that, those two matches caught my eye. But leading up to that semi-final and final, what was the road like for Spurs?
It was an interesting time. It was an interesting season. We sold Glenn Hoddle in 88. We sold Waddle in 89, and we brought in Lineker. and Gascoigne had signed in '88, and that kind of late '80s, early '90s was a very exciting team. And then, of course, that 90-91 season, you're coming back off Italian 90. Gascoigne was perhaps the most famous player in the world. Gary Lineker had just had a very good World Cup, had just moved back from Barcelona. And there was a real enthusiasm. And I remember the start of the season, they were 10 games unbeaten. They lost to Liverpool, but then they went another 3 or 4 games unbeaten. They were all the way up in third around the turn of the year, and then they capitulated. I think they only won 6 or 7 out of the last 20 or so games. They ended up finishing 10th. They got a bit lucky in the cups. They had they had some pretty good fixtures. I mean, the early rounds was like Blackpool, Oxford, Portsmouth, Notts County to get to the semi-final, most of whom were lower level teams. But even at that stage, it was a one-man crusade by Gascoigne. If I remember rightly, it was his free kick that Stewart put in the only goal against Blackpool. When they played Portsmouth, he scored 2 and Oxford scored 2, made 2 in a 4-2 win. He scored both the goals, I think, against Portsmouth. He scored 1 of the goals against Notts County. Lineker hadn't even scored in the FA Cup up to the semi-final. And then you had this momentous semi-final, the first time in history, and it's happened a couple of times since, obviously, that Spurs played Arsenal in an FA Cup semi-final. They took the decision to play it at Wembley, which had never been done. Now we're used to this, right?
Yeah.
Those days, you used to go to Ellen Road or Hillsborough or Old Trafford, but they said it doesn't make sense.
Villa Park was another one, yeah.
2 London teams to go to Old Trafford doesn't make sense. So they said they'll play the semi-final there. And Arsenal, of course, were heavy favourites because everyone thought they were going to do the double. They won the league that season, which was their second title in a couple of years. But Gascoigne just came out in inspired form. Of course, he had the free kick after 4 or 5 minutes. David Seaman perhaps going with the wrong hand. And then a sloppy, scrappy kind of second goal, which was Lineker. And then early in the second half, they killed it off with another one that Seaman perhaps should have done a bit better, let through his hands from Lineker. And I think that was the moment to be, to Daryl's thing earlier about being Spursy. You beat Arsenal in the semi-final, then you go to the final, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing we in the League Cup a few years later when we beat Chelsea and then lost to Blackburn, right? But going into the final, obviously very confident against Nottingham Forest. Brian Clough, the FA Cup was the only trophy that he hadn't won. So it was a big deal for him coming to the end of his career. And a very talented Forest team. People forget that like Roy Keane, Gary Charles, Stuart Pearce, a lot of players that were on the way up at the time. And of course, Gascoigne just, literally a minute into the game and he leaves his studs on someone's chest and somehow doesn't get a booking. I mean, that should have been a red card even then. And you can just tell he's so head up, he's so crazy running around the pitch. And by I think it was 10 minutes or so, he's taken out Gary Charles and done his own knee in the process. And that was really when Gascoigne's career kind of went down. And Spurs conceded from that free kick, Stuart Pearce, so 1-0 down. And for about 20, 30 minutes, they were a bit shell-shocked. Then they got a penalty and missed it. Mark Crossley saved from Lineker, only the second penalty at the time that had ever been saved in a cup final after Dave Besant. And then Paul Stewart, who people don't often remember. Paul Stewart signed in 1988. He was about 1.7 million. Gascoigne was about 2 million. But Paul Stewart was signed as a striker. He was a striker at Man City. He famously scored a hat-trick when 3 of their players scored hat-tricks to beat Huddersfield 10-1 a couple of years before. And he had been converted into a midfielder, which he went on to play very successfully for England and Liverpool. He got the equaliser, went to extra time, and of course, there was a little bit of poetic justice in there as Des Walker scored an own goal, which for Spurs fans with memories of 1987, when Gary Mabbott scored an own goal to lose the cup final to Coventry, it was a sweet feeling. And at the time, it was our 8th FA Cup win, which was the most of any team. Of course, now Manchester United, Arsenal have way beyond.
Yeah,
it was when I look back at that was one of those last kind of finals in the early 90s where in the FA Cup you could still really have anybody getting to the final and winning. Yeah. And there's been a few glimpses of that since with Portsmouth and Wigan. But for the most part, there's been a big 4, big 5 team in pretty much every single cup final for 30-odd years. and particularly the FA Cup even more so than the Carabao Cup. It's become a trophy that is almost the double trophy that goes with the league. So that, to me, that is a really good old fashioned cup final day. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing your memory on the final. I think another memory I have of Spurs and of Lineker, in fact, his last ever goal was against Manchester United in
Yeah.
English football.
And outside the box. His
At
only goal he ever
Old Trafford.
the box was against Man United. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Daryl, now over to you. So Daryl, you're Singaporean. You got into being a Spurs fan in 1994. You know, in Singapore, the two most famous, most popular English clubs are Manchester United and Liverpool. How do you become a Spurs fan?
Yeah, I think for me, I remember getting into football. I think I was about 10 years old, 11 years old. I think it was the 1993 SEA Games. So it was just following Singapore, and they had I think they were in the semi-final against Myanmar or something like that. And then
Yeah,
um Singapore was the heavy favorite. They were the home
that
side,
game,
but
of course.
somehow Lim Tong Hai scored 2 own goals. Then it was 3-3, and then it went to penalties, and then Singapore got knocked out,
Yeah,
something like that. And then somehow I came to watch English football. I think it was the early days of the Premier League, and then they would have the highlights package
yeah,
on Sunday mornings.
yeah,
I think Spurs caught my eye because of the aesthetics. The white kit is something that caught my eye, but I wasn't like fully supporting them. But I remember they had a player called Gary Mabbott, and then he wore this mask
yeah.
because he
Face
had
mask.
a
Yeah,
skull
yeah.
injury or skull fracture. So it's kind of like I had this in the back of my mind that Spurs are one of the teams. But I did see the table at the end of the show, and I think it was United, Norwich, or Blackburn who were like closer to the top, and then
Aston Villa. Yeah,
Aston Villa, yeah. And then the weeks just went on in my life, and then it went to 1994, and then there was the World Cup in USA '94.
yeah,
And that's where it was the first World Cup I actively sought out to watch, and I
yeah.
was aware of what was happening. I was reading the news articles and all that. And then after the World Cup came and went, again during the World Cup, my heart was broken because I was following Italy and Roberto Baggio, and
Yes,
he was like sort of carrying the Italian team, and then they went to the final, and then he skied his
yes, Daryl.
penalty,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
to give Brazil the World Cup win. So yeah, wow. Talking back, it's already 2 heartbreaks and haven't even got to Spurs yet. The 1994-95 season kicked off, and then Spurs were suddenly signing a lot of players,
Yeah,
and they signed like Popescu, Dumitrescu, and then they
yes.
signed Jurgen Klinsmann, and like,
Yeah.
I was like, I know these few guys, and I know this guy Klinsmann, so like, okay,
From the
I'm gonna
World Cup,
put
right?
my from the World Cup, so I'm gonna put my support behind Spurs, and then I also found out they had like Sheringham, Bambi, and Anderton, and I
Yeah.
thought
Mhm.
like this team should be quite good, right? Like they have all
Mm.
these attacking players. And the first game of the season, Spurs went to Hillsborough to play Sheffield
That was
Wednesday.
interesting.
Yeah, and then like Klinsmann diving header, Spurs
Yeah.
won 4-3, and then that was it. I was supporting them. And then it was difficult after that. I think after the first few games of that season, it was difficult for Spurs. Ossie Ardiles was the manager at the time, and
Yeah.
at the time I didn't quite register that he was a former Spurs player. I just thought he should be quite good, right? He's an Argentine manager.
Mm.
But seems that Aussie just focused on the attacking play and forgot about the defense, or left it to the defense to organize themselves. And in the mid 90s, watching Spurs, it was difficult, but I just didn't understand like how come they couldn't fix the defense, but I was still supporting them. Of course, it was difficult going to school and then seeing like a lot of your friends just being happy that Man United won again, and then Spurs was like we lost 3-2 or we just had a 2-2 draw or something like that. But it wasn't too long after that. 1999, Spurs somehow won the League Cup, and to me, it's like, oh, it's not that bad. I've been supporting them maybe 4 or 5 years at that point, and it's like, oh, they did manage to win the League Cup. Then it's like, should be quite good, right? Like they still should be quite decent. So I just carried on, and lo and behold, it's been 30 years.
Yeah. And coming back to that Ossie Ardiles team, the thing that impressed me actually in that season is when they got Klinsmann in, they got Dumitrescu in, Popescu in. And I mean, you and I, we both started our first World Cup at the same World Cup, USA 94. And
Yeah.
the Romanian players were quite impressive in that tournament.
Yes.
So these guys were some of the mainstays in that team. And in those days, the Italian league was the best league in the world. All the best foreigners would go there. And English, it's quite rare for the English league teams to attract this caliber kind of foreigners. And Spurs managed it. I was quite impressed, especially the signing of Klinsmann. He's had his stint in Italy before this, and then to come to Spurs and do well, I think that caught my eye. And then the second thing, like what you mentioned, the game, like Ossie Ardiles forgot to defend. It's just it was crazy scores,
I think
4-3.
he did not forget. It's just like he left it to the defense to sort it out.
He just sorted out himself. So there were some crazy scores, and he didn't last long. October he was sacked around now.
You've got to look back though, because a lot of people don't remember that the season before Spurs flirted with relegation. We finished 15th or so, and it was really only a couple of games left that we kind of got out the mire. So it was a bang average team that had finished 15th. And we only actually basically signed those three players and a youngster, I think Owen Cole, I think his name was, who never did anything. In that whole window, we only signed those three players. And we let go a lot of, journeyman players like Steve Sedgley and Vinny Samways and people like that. But you basically took a team that finished 15th and dropped in three world-class stars into a formation. And of course, it was the famous five, right? The famous five was Sheringham up front, Barmby in behind, Anderton on the right, and Dumitrescu on the left. And at the start of the season, it was literally like you were playing with five at the back and five up front. It was like 1910 football kind of thing. And the principle was, we're going to score more than you. But then teams figured out pretty quickly that if they just sit back, soak it up, and then hit on the counter, that they will just score at will. And we won 3 of the first 4 games. The only game we lost, actually, ironically, was Man United, since we're here today. And then the wheels came off, and I remember getting battered 5-2 again at an awful Man City at the time. Back in 1994, they weren't very good. And by November, Ossie was gone. And Popescu by that time had come in, who was a brilliant holding midfielder.
Yeah.
And that helped.
He was more like a sweeper.
Right? Yeah, he was playing kind of, sweeper, but a lot of the time right in front of the back four there, a lot of stability. And basically Dumitrescu got dropped.
Yeah.
Effectively. And that kind of sorted out the balance. And Jerry Francis came in. Ossie was gone by November. And when Francis came in, they were undefeated for something like 10, 11 games. And they made a decent run of it. But the other thing people forget is that season was the season where at the start of the season we had a 12-point deduction levied against the club for financial irregularities from the 1980s, previous owners.
Oh yeah, Irving Scholar, right? Was it?
Irving Scholar, which Alan Sugar went and thought, and we were supposed to stand from the FA Cup.
Yeah, we were thrown out of the FA Cup before it even started, right?
And we were appealing and everything. So we'll come back to the Spursy thing. It felt like our name was on the cup.
Oh, yeah. I remember that line.
Especially when we beat Liverpool at Anfield.
2-1 we won, right?
With a last-minute Klinsmann goal, and you kind of sat there and went, hey, this is our year, and you're playing a very weak, average Everton side and get battered 4-1 in the semi.
Yeah, the semi-final, yeah.
Daniel Amokachi.
Daniel Amokachi, who I just read the other day, I had no idea, he substituted himself on.
Yeah.
The manager even knowing, I think it was Joe Royal, put himself on and then scored like with his first touch or something. But I mean, there were some immense moments that season. Of course, the Sheffield Wednesday game, the Liverpool away win in the cup. The most, one of my absolute highlights was Southampton away in the FA Cup earlier when we were 2-0 down at half time and looking completely all at sea, and they brought on Rosenthal. You've got all this attacking talent of Klinsmann, Anderson, Barbie, Dumitrescu, and they brought on Ronnie Rosenthal, and he scores a hat trick of 30-yarders that in hindsight, Bruce Grobbelaar might have taken a bribe to, allegedly. And they go on to win the game 6-2 in extra time. And that was just the kind of insane football that we had at that time. And actually, we ended up finishing 7th under Jerry Francis. And it was only because we only won one of our last 7 games. Otherwise, we could have got as high as 5th or 6th, which would have been an incredible turnaround. But then at the end of the season, Klinsmann went. The replacement was Chris Armstrong. Popescu left. Barmby left. And the whole thing kind of fever dream. 1 year, fever dream, and gone.
Yeah, because then if you look back, we finished 7. We went to the FA Cup final. You're still thinking like, it's not too bad of a
FA Cup semi-final.
The semi-final. Yeah, but we're still thinking it's not so bad of a season. But yeah, when Klinsmann left, Popescu left, we just found it difficult. And Nick Barmby left, I think, to join, was it Middlesbrough or Everton?
Because he said he wanted to be up north. Yeah, he went to Middlesbrough.
Yeah. So it was odd, and then losing all these players. Chris Armstrong came in, he was
okay.
Took a while to settle. But Spurs had a good season, a good jersey after that. Because we switched to Pony, and then Hewlett Packard came on board as a sponsor. Yeah. So I was still on board on the Spurs
with the jerseys.
Yeah, with the jerseys.
All right, let's fast forward to many years after into the Northeast now. So this Dutchman has come in to take charge of Spurs, Martin Jol. So first of all, maybe James, just share with us what the seasons were like before Martin Jol took over. What was Spurs like before Martin Jol?
Well, that was the George Graham years and everything else, and we Daryl talked there about 1999 when we somehow won a League Cup final, showing what if you've got 10 men, you don't have to give up the game, you can still win, which some teams could learn from. But it was...
Your neighbors should learn, huh?
It was still a patchy period. And again, it's one of those things people forget in the mists of time, was that Spurs had this three-man management team that was going to change the dynamic of the club. They had Frank Arneson as director of football, and then they had a major coup. They got Jacques Santini, who was the French national team manager, and Martin Jol was only brought in to be assistant manager. And then after 10 games, Santini was playing very negatively. It was all defensive. The fans weren't happy. There was some noise behind the scene. And after 10 games, Santini walked away. And the club turned to Martin Jol to take over. And because he immediately kind of reinstated the attacking football, that season wasn't a great season. We still were nowhere near the top of the table. But it picked up a little bit after a while. And, we started to play football. We were attacking. We were never in danger of challenging. The best season, of course, we had was the lasagna season. Yeah,
I was going to get to that, but yeah.
But at least it was good football. And again, there's some great memories. I look back at that period. It was the famous, breaking the hoodoo against Chelsea when we finally beat Chelsea after 20 plus games without defeat. We made it to Europe for 2 seasons in a row since the first time since I think 1985 or something like that. And some of the players that came in at that time, people forget that it was under Martin Jol that Gareth Bale actually joined the club. He may not have, magically appeared really until the Harry Redknapp time, but that was the Martin Jol kind of period. And for a lot of Spurs fans, they appreciate Martin Jol. I actually exchanged text messages with Martin Jol. I was telling the guys about 3-4 days ago. And the first message he sent to me was Moussa Dembele was the greatest player he's ever seen. That was the first thing he said to me. And then he was talking about Berbatov and Clint Dempsey and some of these things. He still lives near the Spurs training ground. All these years later, he still lives in the Essex kind of London area. You'll still see him at the game sometimes because he loves the club. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Daryl. Martin Jol's time. Very famously, the food poisoning gate. What were your thoughts when all that unfolded? Do you think that there's some conspiracy going on here, or do you think this was Spursy as well?
Yeah, I think
it felt like a conspiracy to me.
For me, I felt that was the birth of Spursiness for me because before that, in the late 90s, it was just Spurs were not good enough. We didn't have like good players, so you go out there, you try your best, but you just come off not good enough. But in the season under Martin Yeo, we were fourth in the table for a very long period of time. Then
Yeah.
came towards the last few games, not enough wins, and then on the final day, I think we needed to win just to be sure, but we lost at West Ham, and then Arsenal won the game, and then on the final day, Arsenal peeped us to fourth, and then you find out like there's this food poisoning case about the lasagna, like it's a bit dodgy and all this kind of thing, and I'm like, come on guys, you have to investigate this. I was all behind, like they were reporting like Daniel Levy wanted to investigate.
He wanted to appeal,
Yeah, I
right?
wanted to appeal
Replay the
and all
match or
that. But
something.
I think like after 2 weeks we realized like it's not going anywhere. We just move on. But
You gotta accept your fate.
it was so frustrating.
It wasn't lasagna; it was stomach flu, right? It was basically that a couple of players just had a stomach bug.
Mm.
It was, yeah.
So it wasn't a conspiracy, James?
No, unfortunately, it wasn't.
Oh,
And it's actually, when you read back on what happened at the time, it's actually quite heroic that some of those guys were literally throwing up in the changing room before the game and throwing up.
God.
There were players that had to be taken off because they were literally going to collapse because they were so dehydrated, hadn't eaten or anything. And they still tried to kind of make it across the line. And I think we only lost 2-1 on the day in the end. But of course, of all people, it was West Ham we had to lose to, and Arsenal that had to pip us
Yeah.
the fourth place. But I think that was the moment, honestly, after, if you go all the way back to that, with the brief flash of 1994, all the way back to 1991. Okay, George Graham, 1999. Okay, we won the League Cup, but it was not Spurs. It wasn't attractive. That was the moment there. And then the following season, we finished in the European places again, where we kind of felt like we were moving the right direction. Berbatov was signed by Martin Jol. Danny Rose was only 16, was signed by Martin Jol. You had Aaron Lennon coming through, Michael Dawson coming through, Jermaine Genius, Yunus Kabul, of course, who played such a role in getting us into the Champions League when it eventually happened. That was really the moment, was the genesis of albeit that we had to go through Tim Sherwood and Andre Villas-Boas to kind of get there. But that was the moment that a lot of the things that later came to pass with Pochettino actually started from that moment with Martin Jol.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm just going to ask you this one. Name one player that was your favorite in the Martin Jol era, and one player you felt you should not have been there at all.
Okay, I'll take that one. Berbatov was the Martin Jol era, and of course it's difficult to ever argue against Berbatov. But of course, Robbie Keane was also really on fire at that time as well. And the one player definitely not. I mean, to be honest, there were a lot of players at that time that definitely not. But I think an interesting one for me, looking back, is when we did the double deal with Nottingham Forest to sign Stephen Reid and Stephen Reid was supposedly the 5 million player, and I think Dawson was the 2 million player. And Stephen Reid obviously took his signing bonus and went to McDonald's or something. I don't know what happened because he was absolutely useless and permanently overweight. So I think that would be just because of. I mean, there were disappointing players, but he was one that was supposed to be something. Yeah.
Well, yourself, Daryl?
Yeah, I think for me, it was Robbie Keane who was really at his peak under Martin Jol. I also have a soft spot for Michael Carrick. He was a young
Was he
player.
already there?
Yeah, he was there under Martin Jol. So I think about the 2 seasons that Jol was manager and Carrick was there in midfield. So I was very sad to see him leave for Man United. And even back then, like maybe 2006 when he left to join United, it was only for like 18.6 million. Even in those days, I felt it was too low of a fee. Like Man United really had a good deal when they signed Carrick, and I'm sure Daniel Levy learned a lot from that experience. Because after that, he never made it easy for teams to come in and buy our players. So I think maybe for Levy, I'm just guessing lah. Maybe he learned a bit from that experience.
Mm.
But the other thing I talked about, the Martin Jol legacy, that again, things people don't often think about, is even his legacy away from Spurs played such a part in Spurs. When he was at Fulham, he's the one that converted Dembele from a striker to a midfielder.
Mm.
And then Spurs signed Dembele from Fulham.
Fulham, yeah.
Ajax, he's the guy who coached Toby Alderweireld and Christian Eriksen. Even Jan Vertonghen. Jan Vertonghen was a midfielder when Martin Jol took over as manager there, and he's the one that converted him into a centre back. So the impact of Martin Jol on Spurs, even across the years, is far more than just Lasagna Gate, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And okay, Ras, maybe a player who shouldn't have been there, maybe it's Mido. Mido was only good for like
Mido.
one season or half a season because he was on loan. He was on loan. He played well, and then we signed him. The moment we signed him, gone. He gave up. He didn't try. Maybe Mido. Yeah.
All right.
I
Okay.
forgot.
So, okay, in the Martin Yule time, you finished fifth twice.
Mm.
So got to the
Yeah.
League Cup semi-finals, lost to Arsenal in 2006-7. You went to the UEFA Cup and FA Cup quarterfinals. You lost to Sevilla in the UEFA Cup quarterfinals and Chelsea in the FA Cup quarterfinals. Not bad. Not bad for Spurs.
Yep,
And moving, yeah, someone want to say something?
no, I just said at that time that was actually a season for us.
Yeah.
Qualifying for Europe, to be getting the cup quarterfinals and semi-finals after what had come before was actually, as I say, it was progress. Yeah.
Yeah, like what James mentioned, it was really under Martin Yeo, we finished fifth twice, and we felt like okay, the club is moving and advancing forward, getting closer to like the top four, because at that time, the top four was established, like Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea, and we felt that as Spurs fans, I mean anybody could go for fifth or fourth spot. And it was always wide open. Like sometimes it'll be Portsmouth. There was Aston Villa who were challenging under the new ownership, but that's why we always felt like Spurs have to get our house in order in terms of the players, the player recruitment, and the manager to be up there, because we felt there was still time to grow and to improve and to catch up. So yeah, the two fifth places under Martinho was really like the start of the proper like Spurs progress. Yeah.
Okay, now fast forward to the late noughties and the early 2010s. Daryl, Mr. Harry Redknapp. Before
Yeah.
Harry Redknapp, what was Spurs like? So
Yeah.
this
So after
this is a bridge between Martin Yole and Harry Redknapp.
yeah. So after Martin Yol, I mean I think Spurs were going through a bad form. Then he was sacked, but we were quite upset to see him leave. We felt maybe the players let him down, but that's football, right? The manager always pays the price. And then one day Ramos, we were going for
Yeah,
one day Ramos, and he delivered. He delivered the League Cup. So
pick up again.
again, we were like, yeah, it's not bad, right? We won a trophy again, and
But that was
under
tough, right? He couldn't speak English. I
yeah,
remember he
maybe
couldn't speak
there was a
English.
language
Yeah,
barrier, and after we won the League Cup, the players just were not motivated. We ended up not finishing well in the league, and then the following season was when we struggled. The famous or infamous 2 points from 8 games, and rightfully Daniel Levy sacked One Day Ramos, and he appointed Harry Redknapp, Uncle Harry, to me, and immediately it kind of took off. Did we beat Bolton? Maybe we beat Bolton.
Also, when he was in the stands and he only got appointed on that day.
Yeah. And then the real debut of Harry Redknapp was when we beat Liverpool. Like we beat Liverpool 2-1.
And then the 4-4 Arsenal
The
draw.
Lane, yeah. Second game was 4-4 at the Lane, and 4-4 at Emirates against Arsenal. So under Harry Redknapp, we did well. We salvaged that season. I think again we finished like 7. And after that, the season after that, we were 4th. There were a couple of 4th place finishers. And so under Harry Redknapp, right, we reached the Champions League. So once again, right, it was like breaking ground. It was new territory for us as Spurs fans. Like we've never seen Spurs in the Champions League. And like, people talk like now it's cliche, oh, the music and all this. But really, when we heard it the first time, like playing on telly, and then Spurs is playing, we were like so proud, so happy in the moment to experience it. For me, just watching from Singapore. And even then we played did we have to play the qualifier? We
Yeah,
played the young boys.
we got battered by on a plastic pitch.
Yeah. So even to get to the Champions League also, it was a bit of a
Yeah,
it was a bit heart pumping also. But we were so happy under Harry Redknapp, like those 2-3 seasons under him. But after a while, I think there were rumors that Harry Redknapp was gonna take over as England manager.
what was
So
it? 2011, 2012.
yeah, 2011, 2012.
January of
And
2012, yeah.
in the end he came to an end after 4 years. I think Spurs didn't renew Redknapp's contract, and he moved on, but it was a great time, and he kept Spurs like competitive, and we sort of improved by finishing fourth a couple of times as well.
But
Yeah.
that was the season where we were on course to finish top three, and then
Yeah.
the feeling was that he got distracted by the England
Yeah, took his eye off the ball. We were like comfortably in third, and then we lost third spot, finished fourth. We still thought like, okay, we finished fourth a few times before, but no. Chelsea, who were like, I don't know, 6 or 8 in the table, but they were in the Champions League, and they went on to win the Champions League
Oh, against Bayern.
against Bayern at Bayern's home ground for the final that year. And then Chelsea got in and they won it under Di Matteo, who came in as caretaker. And this was really maybe peak Spursiness for me. And those were like actively Facebook days. You could see people like editing the Bayern logo or the Spurs logo. And then like they were like, come on, Bayern, do this for Spurs. And then for me, it was just like, what is happening? Why do we make it so hard for ourselves? Like,
That was an incredible final because Bayern battered Chelsea. And
Yeah.
somehow Chelsea won it.
Yeah, sickening.
But overall, a lot of fun memories. Under Harry Redknapp, he had Gareth Bale that came to the fore under his management years. We had Modric during that time, those 4 years or so under Luka Modric. I think when Modric first came, Redknapp looked at him and thought he's too lightweight, too small. Wanted to put him on the left wing, but in the end, he excelled in centre midfield alongside Wilson Palacios. At times, Tom Huddleston. That was the rise of Danny Rose and Kyle Walker on the left and right flank as well. It was really good to see that Spurs team play and under Redknapp, and it's kind of like Redknapp makes it easy for the supporters to understand. He knows how to keep the supporters on side and kind of like keep it simple for fans as well. Like the classic rumor or myth was that like he brought on like Pavlyuchenko, and then like the instructions like just effing run about or something like that. Like it's things like this that you hear and you like, yeah, football is a simple game. It's something we appreciate, just attacking football. Yeah, we had Pavlyuchenko also. That was another like cult favorite of mine. So there were a lot of these players that Spurs had that the Premier League was getting more technical, more advanced, but I still enjoyed watching Spurs. Yeah.
And James, yourself, what's your memories of that time? I guess he was playing the Spurs way, Harry Redknapp. Who were the strikers anyways? Remind me.
So you had
Mentioned Pavlyuchenko.
so I mean at various times you had Keane, you had Crouch, you had Pavlyuchenko, you had Daryl for a brief period, and then that 2010-2011 season in the Champions League, you effectively had Crouch playing up front with Rafael van der Vaart. What a player Van der Vaart was! And
Yeah.
so
If we just left the transfers to Harry Redknapp, we would just re-sign like the entire Portsmouth team, right? Because we had Crouch,
he had Nico
we had
Kranjčar,
Defoe, we
right?
had Nico Kranjčar, and I think we had the keeper. No, I can't remember. Yeah, so like he would just Kabul. I think we re-signed Yunus Kabul or something, also from Portsmouth. Yeah, but what like James mentioned, signing Van der Vaart on the last day, transfer deadline day. So I think these years also like 2011, 2010 is like the peak transfer deadline day years, like Sky Sports. Everybody will try and tune in. Spurs fans in Singapore looking for like dodgy streams to watch transfer deadline day. And really like Van der Vaart signing from Real Madrid, was it 11 million? And we were like, wow, how did Levy pull this off? Where is this coming from? Like, there's no way Van der Vaart signed thinking that I want to play for Harry Redknapp. Like, that wouldn't be enough.
No, classic. But that was the story of that one goes that they wanted rid of Van der Vaart out of Madrid, and that literally Daniel Levy apparently called up Harry Redknapp and right on the deadline and said, "Would you like Rafael Van der Vaart?" And Harry Redknapp thought it was a joke and was just like, "Yeah, of course I want Rafael Van der Vaart." And was actually surprised when they actually signed him. But I mean, that was really, to me, the abiding memories there definitely has to be that Champions League run, and particularly the 2 games against Inter Milan when Gareth Bale kind of announced himself to the world, but also the win. We were actually the last English team left in the Champions League that season when we beat AC Milan, and then we went out to Madrid when Crouch kind of stupidly got sent off like after 20 minutes of the game, and we got battered 4-0 in Madrid. But that was, that was the moment where we kind of said, hey, this Champions League thing is possible. And it took us a fair few years to get back there again. Yeah. But it kind of got a taste in the fan base at that point in time, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for speaking about that. I wanted to touch on your journey in the Champions League as well. It was quite memorable. And Harry Redknapp's time as well, I felt he went one step further than Martin Jol took it, because they got to the League Cup final. They lost to United. And FA Cup semi-finals, lost to Portsmouth. League Cup quarterfinals, lost to United again. You mentioned about Champions League. FA Cup semi-finals, lost to Chelsea. So, very good record, Harry Redknapp. Just missing a trophy, though. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
But if you compare, so I think definitely we had better players like under Harry Redknapp. So the recruitment was much better. For us to be like fourth, third around there. I think really it was being in the Champions League for the first time that the supporters were very happy and were happy being on that journey. Yeah, of course we wanted to win like silverware, be it like the FA Cup or the League Cup, but difficult.
All right. So let's talk again about players now. This time just talk about one player that you felt should not have been in that team at all, in those teams at all, under Harry Redknapp. James, yeah, we'll go with you first, James. I'm sure you have a few in mind, I think.
I mean, I'll group a couple together. It was that transfer window where on deadline day, where we signed like Luis Saha and what was it, Nelson?
Ryan Nelson.
And
Ryan Nelson was it?
We needed
New Zealander, is it?
Yeah, we needed players to push on, and that was what we got. And then the first game, Luis Saha, I think he scored 2 goals, and we beat Everton 4-0 or something. And we thought, hey, and then nothing happened. And that was a classic Daniel Levy window and a classic Harry Redknapp window, because Harry Redknapp went for old pros that he thought he could work with, and Daniel Levy gave him cheap bargains on the last day of the season, and neither of them ever worked out. So I think that one day in the transfer window really, really killed us at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Yourself, Daryl?
Yeah. I said previously that like we definitely had better players. The recruitment was better, but yeah, that Luis Saha, Ryan Nielsen signings in that January window was very odd, because we felt we needed like younger players and all that. So really, Ryan Nelson had no right being signed at that point for Spurs lah. So he was the odd one out at that point. His best days were behind him.
Oh, there were plenty more. Like Darren Bent, for what he cost us for 18 million, and he was supposed to be the
up and coming English striker, right? That time.
Falling out for, yeah. I mean, he'd done so well at Charlton and all those things. And we mentioned a lot of the players that Harry Redknapp would keep signing his buddy again and again and again. But I mean, that was a funny period, because for every good signing we made, we pretty much made a bad one as well during that period. But like Cranchar was a good signing.
Oh, William Gallas.
Oh, yes, you had William Gallas.
We have William Gallas. I felt like he just wanted to collect like London clubs that he's played for in his career. So I think William Gallas also was someone like he was past his best at the point we were getting him. Like I don't know why like we got him. We should have gotten someone younger. So I think maybe I don't know how much was driven by Daniel Levy or how much was Redknapp giving his recommendations, and maybe Redknapp just wanted to work with people or players he was familiar with. Oh, we also signed like this South African defender, I think, Bongani Kumalo or something like that.
Come on.
I think we had a pre-season. We went to South Africa and then we signed this player Kumalo, who was a South African like international, but he never played for Spurs. So like, why did we sign him? Like, he's supposed to be a defender, and like, we never played him, never gave him minutes.
That's
I just didn't
interesting.
understand that. But everyone else like fitted into the squad. They were playing regularly. They had minutes. Yeah, we signed Sandro during Harry Redknapp's time. I think we still had Jonathan Woodgate. We signed Stephen Pina. He also helped us
Yeah,
along.
Steven Pina was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So more hits lah, more hits than misses lah.
Okay, I'll give you more hits than misses compared to what came before. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's go to Spurs of today then. James, of course, I mean, you both would have a lot of positives about Spurs of today, but I honestly, James, tell me about Spurs of today. Is it all rosy, or is it really, because last season I remember you started off the season very well, and there was a period in time where it just fizzled out, and then you were struggling, and then people were saying, oh, Ange has been found out and he's got no plan B. Everyone know how to beat him. I remember like Chelsea beat Spurs with they had a numerical inferiority, if I'm not wrong, when they played Spurs, something like that. Please remind me, James. So tell me about Spurs of today. Looks like they are going in the right direction, yes.
No, I mean, Ange has his way of playing. He's often accused of not having a plan B, right? He has his way of playing, and he points to the success. But you've got to look and say that when you're at Celtic and you've got the best players in the league and you play like that, eventually you'll win out. If you put him in charge of Man City and he plays like this, he'd win the league. He would, right? But we're not. When you've got arguably 4, 5, 6, 7th best squad in the league, whatever it may be. It's difficult. I think last season we started well. We caught people by surprise, and some of the players we had signed, were on fire. Madison was on fire. Son, coming off a bad season, was playing well again. Udogie, finally arrived from Italy and surprised a lot of people. But then we had a spate of injuries, and then it coincided with that Chelsea game. So that Chelsea game was Romero and Udogie got sent off before half time. And it was Spurs that had nine men, and by that point we should have been 2 or 3 up. We were 1 up. We had a goal that was offside that should never have, was careless on our part to be offside. And we were actually toying with them. It was a question of how many we were going to win by, because remember at that time Chelsea were not good.
Yeah.
And Romero got sent off. Udogie gets sent off. And then the thing that people laughed at was that with 9 men, we played an offside line on the halfway line. And we just dared them to kick it in behind. And people remember that we lost 4-1, but they forget that with about 10 minutes to go, 2-1 down, Dyer scored an equalizer, which got
Eric Dyer
offside, just literally inches offside. And of course, then we went on to get caught out on the break. And the combination of, in that game, we not only lost Romero and Udogie for the red cards, Van de Ven went off injured with a hamstring injury, Madison went off injured. And suddenly, the lack of depth in the squad, was pretty quick. We reached a point during that window where we had Ben Davies and Emerson Royal as centre backs, which has to be the slowest centre back pairing in history, right? And I think what it showed actually is something that honestly is still the problem today. We even saw it last night. That goes back to the Pochettino time, which is our starting 11. Possibly 12, possibly 13, can go up against anyone on their day, and they actually can. You think back to Pochettino's time when we battered Man City like 4-1 at home and things like that. But the problem was always even in that Pochettino team, was once you looked to the bench and once you looked past kind of Lucas and Wanyama, and then you looked along the bench and you saw, George Kevin and Kudu, and G and people like this, that were these £12 million, supposedly up and coming signings. The strength and depth wasn't there. Was Fernando Llorente, God bless his soul for everything he did for us in that Champions League run, but was Fernando Llorente good enough to be backing up effectively Harry Kane? Was Lamela good enough to be in that kind of team? And one of the criticisms, if you remember, was we went that kind of 3 transfer windows without signing anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Pochettino's reason he gave, it's often been blamed on Levy, but Pochettino himself said, I only want to sign a player if they're better than what we've got, and I don't see anybody that's better than what we've got. And it's like, yeah, but you're finishing second or third in the league and getting knocked out of Europe in quarterfinals. What do you mean there's nobody out there better than what you've got, right? And I think we're a little bit in that situation now. Now, ideally, the backup to Son was supposed to be Wilson Odobert, but unfortunately, Odebert's injured. So last night we end up with Timo Werner playing on the left. But you can see it's such a drop down from Son to Timo Werner. It's going to be a drop down from Solanke to Richarlison. Who is even our backup left back at the moment? Ben Davies, Jed Spence, who's actually a right back. Who is our backup right back? Archie Gray, who's a centre midfielder, or Jed Spence again as the backup right back. And you really feel like that they need to go out and sign. I really wanted them to go out and sign one more top quality forward, one more top quality centre midfielder, whether that's a Jacob Ramsey or even, not a huge fan, but even a Conor Gallagher type, and a good quality left back in this last window. And you've said, okay, this is a squad that can do something. But the promising thing for me is it reminds me of the period when Sherwood into Pochettino, when you had Dele Alli, Eric Dyer, all these guys coming through, young players coming through and emerging into the team, and that carried us forward. I'm looking at this now, and I'm looking at how young the squad is. People forget Kulusevski's still very young. Johnson obviously is young. Then you've got your Archie Grays, your Bergvals, Destiny Udogie, Mickey van der Ven, even Vicario. These are young players in here. If you can build on that, there is a real potential there for the future. And it's funny because one of the directors of Spurs at the time came out to visit me in Singapore around that time of 2017, 2018. And he actually admitted to me that we kind of fell backwards into our transfer strategy, that we got lucky with Dele Alli and Eric Dyer and all that, because he said basically our strategy was we're going to buy a bunch of young players because we can afford their transfer fees and we can afford their wages. And at the time we were struggling to afford wages. And the plan was that we sign 5 of them and 2 or 3 will work out, 2 won't. And of the 2 or 3 that work out, you'll sell one, you'll make a profit, and the other 2 will hang around. They didn't for a moment think that you would produce a Dele Alli or that you would produce an Eric Dyer for £4 million. And the director was actually laughing with me that, the strategy was based around we're going to buy them young, buy them cheap, low wages, and then when they get good, we sell them, and hopefully some of them turn out and we compete. And suddenly we ended up with a team, albeit with the luck of a once-in-a-generation Harry Kane, that was capable of challenging. And I think the club is looking at this again now and saying, can we do the same thing with Odobert, with Bergval, with Gray, with Udogie, and get these kind of players in and be the club where they grow? And we've already seen Udogie and Vicario and others become full internationals, Bergval, since they joined the club. So to me, it's very optimistic. But the big thing now would be we need to keep building on this for the next 2 years. If we keep building on this, you look at what Arsenal have done, as much as it pains me. 2-3 years ago, they had one of the youngest teams in the Premier League. Yeah. And they were hanging around 4th or 5th, and we were making fun of them because we beat them to Champions League that year when we were 4th, they were 5th. But they were the youngest team, and our team had an average age of 28, and they had an average age of 23. And then you look what happened 2 years later. Our 28-year-old team became a 30-year-old team and fell apart under Conte. and Stellini. And meanwhile, that Arsenal team became a 24, 25-year-old team and is competing for titles. And to me, that's got to be the goal for the next 2 years, is as Son moves on and as Romero in that time realistically will move on and one or two others, is how do you get a couple more youngsters in and form that new version of Pochettino's team? And to me, that's what football's all about. I want good quality football, but I also want players that I can watch them grow and develop and be invested in their development. There's nothing more exciting. I mean, last night I was watching the football and I saw we're 2-0 up and Man United really had us under the cosh a little bit there. Yeah. And he trusted the youngsters to take off Maddison, to take off Werner, which I don't think was a hard decision. But he brings on Bergvall, he brings on Sarr, he brings on Mikey Moore to see out the game at Old Trafford when you're only 2-0 up and when Man United were attacking. And Bergvall's first touch is the corner. Sarr's first touch is the flick on.
Yeah.
Mankey scores, game over. I love the fact that he's willing to go out and do that. And to me, that's what football's all about.
All right. Daryl, yourself? Your opinions on Spurs today? Actually, got to remind you as well that before the game against United, Spurs were also in a position where they said the Spurs were struggling because results weren't good, but your performances were good. So
I think
wasn't matching the results that you were getting.
Yeah, Spurs for this season, like the first game against Leicester, we played well for like the first hour, but then Leicester came back and they leveled it. They could have won it, but we went away with the draw, and then we thought it was fine. The next game after that, we beat Everton 4-0 at home. We thought, okay, the season is up and running. We went to Newcastle. We also played well, but somehow we lost 2-1. We had chances during that game, but we did not convert at all. Against Arsenal in the derby, it was difficult game, and the corner that came in, like Romero kind of switched off or got beaten, and then we lost that game. Again, it was a game where we didn't take our chances, kind of had more of the possession, but just didn't take the chances came our way. Then we beat Brentford 3-1 at the Lane, and when we thought that it felt a bit start-stop, but overall I felt that the team was doing well in terms of possession. They knew what the manager wanted, but it just felt that we couldn't score. Part of it maybe was Solanke was out for a few games, I think, and it was a bit of the Spursiness again because he played the whole season for Brentford. Then he signed for Spurs. Then he played the first game. And then after that, he got injured. So he missed the second, third, or maybe fourth game. So against United, and for me, I felt that it's a game that's being shown across the world, and in the sense that everybody will be watching. United fans, maybe even non-Man United fans will be watching. And I always felt that this game at White Hart, at Old Trafford, is a game that Spurs must always do well. We must always look good. If not, the whole world will just think Spurs are shit this season. So for us really to go to Old Trafford in front of the world or watching global audience, to win 3-0, to really dominate from start to finish. Yeah, maybe in the second half there was a bit of a United fight back. But for Spurs to win 3-0, as a headline, it looks good when we dig deeper, like what James mentioned, to see the youngsters come on to set up the third goal. For example, it's great to see Bergvall come on, Sarr come on, and these guys are very young. And Son wasn't playing. Son was injured also, so it's kind of like a peek into the future. 2-3 years down the road when Son maybe moves on or kind of retires. How will it be? Because for me, it's been sad in a way to see the players under Pochettino. Time moves, and the players also have to move on. But it was sad to see them leave. But they were just not good enough. They were not at their peak anymore. Maybe except for Harry Kane, but everyone else kind of was out of form or was not at their peak levels. Fizzled out past 28, past 29. And they were so great, like those players under Pochettino from 2015 all the way up to 2019, 2020. But now it's a new beginning, it's a new era under Postecoglou. So a lot of the youngsters coming in, great to see them in action, like Van der Ven, Dragusin that we have also, Udogi and Poro in defense. I feel that at least for the next 5 years, we have a good starting 11, but like what James mentioned, we kind of need
Backup.
the backup, the players off the bench. And I think football has kind of evolved where if you're on the bench, you're not just you're not deemed as not good enough, but you will get your chance like on 50 minutes, on 60 minutes, you'll still get like 30 minutes or so. And at that time could be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So there's still like one half of a game for you to really make a difference. And
Especially
it's really for
when
you
you
to
have
come
five.
on to finish.
Nowadays, you have 5 substitutes.
Yeah, and got 5 subs, right? So it's really like making use of the 25-man squad. So this is something I feel that Spurs really need to get good players in, because like now the backup left back, like James was mentioning, is it Ben Davies or is it even like Sergio Reguilon, who wanted to leave the club,
Oh,
and
yes.
we let him look for a club, but no club came in for him.
He's still
So
at Spurs.
so he's back at
Oh.
Spurs.
He got put in the Premier League squad. He's not in the European squad, but he got put in the Premier League squad because
Yeah.
we had a space.
Yeah, so we have a space. So we are the opposite of Chelsea. Chelsea had too many players. We have too little. So we are on the conservative side, and we can afford to like put Reguilon, back in. But on the flip side, it's like Jet Spence has been good. When we signed him, then he didn't fit in. I think Conte, didn't put it in good terms when he said like it's just a club signing, kind of dismissed him. But Spence came back, proved his worth to Postecoglou. He's actually a right back, but he always comes on to play a left back. So far this season. Up front, like Solanke, Fox in the box is great, but after that, it's Richarlison, and Richarlison also is not fit at the moment. But I think maybe Spurs were hoping that Richarlison would have gone to Saudi. Maybe Saudi were interested, but Richarlison wasn't keen, so we were kind of like sticking with Richie. But Wilson Odobert, Brendan Johnson are good. Timo Werner, can see he's short on confidence. Yesterday he had 2 great chances. He didn't score. I was hoping he would score for his own morale boosting means, but still not scoring. And I'm shocked. Like I was watching him in the Bundesliga days, he was so good, but when he came to Chelsea, he struggled. But after he went back to Red Bull, right, and he did well. But then now he comes back, he still can't get the goals for whatever reason. But
The best right now,
coming on good lah.
the best thing right now, honestly, that I can say, I hear from people at the club, they will not sign a player now unless the player explains to them why they want to play for Spurs.
Oh.
And that doesn't sound like much, right? You think you go for a job interview, right?
Yeah.
You go for a job interview and they'll say, why do you want to join our company? Footballers don't get asked that. Always, the club contacted me. It's a bit like you get headhunted, right? So, hey, you contacted me. What do you want from me? But the club actually says to the players, yes, we're interested in you. We're interested in you. But why do you think Spurs is the right club for you? What do you think we can offer you in your career? And so they're getting players who actually want to play for the club and that see. They're not mercenaries like we've had in the past. They're not people that will get their head turned very quickly. They're not people that will show up some days and not show up some days. If you look at every signing we've made in the last year, there's something about them that is, this is why we signed them. This is what the point is that they have to prove for themselves. This is why Spurs is the right club for them. This is why they will come in every day and give 100%. And you can actually work it out. Vicario wanted a chance. He wanted to be in the Premier League. Van de Ven, the same. He wanted to be in the Premier League. He wanted to break into the Dutch national team. Or Dougie, the same. So we're not signing the done deals necessarily. We're signing the players that have that potential. And I love that because that means you're getting that hunger, that appetite, that enthusiasm, that willingness to prove themselves.
All right. Okay. And what would be a successful season for Spurs this season?
Treble. I think treble would be successful.
All right.
I'm not saying quadruple. You'll notice. Honestly, we're going to be in the mix between 4th and 6th. Chelsea have surprised me how quickly Maresco's sorted out that mess. I didn't expect that. Villa, I think, are hanging in there right now, but I think as the European fixtures will catch up on them. Newcastle don't seem to have really pushed on that much. So I think, look, Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal are going to pretty much be the top 3.
Yeah.
And I think Chelsea, hopefully ourselves, and Chelsea, bear in mind, don't really have much else to do except the league, right?
Yeah.
So they got conference. Chelsea got conference league, right?
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah. Chelsea, Villa, and ourselves, because West Ham have fallen off a cliff, Man United fallen off a cliff in that 4th to 6th mix, and then really, honestly, the hope is a cup, and we've got a nasty draw in the Carabao, but I guess it's better to get Man City at home, and it's better to get them early when they don't take the competition so seriously, because by the time they get to semis, they show up. Hopefully, a good FA Cup run, because we haven't had a good FA Cup run in a while. And Europe, honestly, you look at this competition and you say, besides us and Man United and maybe Porto, you kind of look at the rest of the competition and you say, if you put out a full strength team and you perform, you've got to be getting to the final in this competition. And we haven't, the irony is, besides the Champions League where we managed to get to the final, if you look at our Conference League and Europa League form over the years, it's abysmal. We barely even get to the quarterfinals most times, and yet suddenly Champions League we get to the final, right? So for me, it would be at least it's a cup trophy. It's a definitely at least one final, one semi-final, and it's 5th in the league. I'd take 6th in the trophy. I'd take 4th without a trophy. I'm okay.
Okay. Daryl, yourself?
Yeah, for me it's similar. I was always hoping that Spurs will win the FA Cup, because when I started supporting, they had the most number of FA Cup wins, but that has changed so much in the 30 seasons that has gone by. I would really like to see Spurs win the FA Cup. I think the FA Cup is still like something that
Romantic, right?
romantic when we look back on it.
It's the same.
But
European nights are romantic for Spurs as well. Always.
Yeah. So then that brings me on to the Europa League. So then, if we win the Europa League, which we might be one of the top, 3 or 4 favorite teams in the competition, and it's the revamp format, right? You don't get Champions League teams that are dropping in. So let's really go all out and win the Europa League, because we win it, we win a trophy, and we get into the Champions League for next season, right? So then, even if you finish like 10 in the league, it doesn't matter if you win the Europa League. So winning the Europa League will be like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You win your trophy, you get into the Champions League for next season. That would be great. Winning the FA Cup also would be wonderful for me. In the league, I think it will be very difficult. If we get 4th, I think the target, if we get 4th, would be great. If we get 5th or 6th, it's fine. Yeah.
The trophy to me is the important thing, because I always maintain, and you can talk sliding doors and history, but I always maintain, if that Spurs team under Pochettino around about 2018, if they had won a trophy, 2016, 2017, any trophy, they got to Carabao Cup finals a couple of times and everything, right? I think that team would have kicked on, and I think they would have won more things, because you just got to get over that line that one time and then get that feeling for it. And I think if this team, this young team, as they are, can win a trophy, then I think they could go on to win 2 or 3 more in the next 4 or 5 years. But right now it's an albatross, right? It's that weight on your monkey on your back, whatever you want to call it, is you kind of feel like you're gonna lose that final, you're gonna lose that semi, something's gonna go wrong. I'm telling you right now, if Spurs win a trophy this season, they will win another one within the next 3 to 4 years, without any doubt whatsoever, and that it will be a push on. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So all the best to Spurs this season. Hopefully you win the league as well. That's my pick.
After the Man City Chargers, is it?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Well, let's see what happens with that. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for sharing your memories with Spurs. I hope you both enjoyed your time on the show. And for everyone listening and watching, because this goes out on Spotify and YouTube, do like, share, and subscribe to us. And we've got all kinds of content coming, not just episodes. We have other content coming out during the week as well, sharing with you about football in the 90s and noughties. So if you love football in the era, we are the place to go to. So yeah, last words, James and Daryl, before you sign off. Maybe sing us the Spurs song.
It's got to be come on you Spurs, right? That's got to be the last word. You can't
Yeah.
anything else, right?
Yeah, the future is bright. The future is lily white. Come on, you Spurs!
All right. Nice. Okay, guys. Cheers.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
Ras. Goodbye.
Welcome. My pleasure.